The art of selling. Whether you know it or not, you're in sales. We all are. We may not make money selling, but we all sell nonetheless. Every day, we're selling something. Think about it. For example, it might be the idea of going to school for your kids, or asking your friends to go to dinner with you, or the actual process of selling goods and services to a client. Now, selling an idea or a commodity can be a tricky process. There are so many moving parts involved in the sales process. We must look at what will get our pitch over the line. Do we need an incentive? Do we need to barter? Do we need to put in a good price? And here's the biggie. What are the needs and desires of the audience we're presenting our sales pitch to? In amongst all of this are two very important elements: perception and personality. That is, who are you selling to? We automatically assume the information we give them from our personal knowledge base and our personality style is easily understood and assimilated. Do you know how your personality affects the way people interpret your ideas and sales technique? As we've discussed, and will continue to discuss, is how unique every person's perception is. I'm Kate Mason. Welcome to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. In this episode of Personalities, Parenting and Partners, we'll be talking about the importance of awareness of personality type differences and discussing how we convey information when we're selling a service or an idea to another person, and what we need to do to take into consideration for each of the 4 preferences of the MBTI when we work with them. How can we make sure our ideas or sales pitch are clearly understood in someone else's preferred style of thinking? How can you use this knowledge to create a successful sale of your idea or product to anyone? Let's take a look at selling to the family. When my children were 4 and 6 years of age, we were invited by one of our friends to celebrate their child's birthday at the zoo. They'd given me an idea of where it would be, so when we arrived, we walked around the zoo looking for the party. On the way, we enjoyed ourselves stopping and looking at the animals and having a good time. However, we failed to find the party, so in the end I went to the zoo office to inquire where it might be. As I came out, Paul said, "Well?" I answered, "It's actually tomorrow." He rolled his eyes in annoyance. "I can't believe you did that. What a waste of time." I turned to Jack and Cassie in prime sales mode, and I said to them, "Guess what? You get to go to the zoo 2 days in a row. Not many kids get to do that. How lucky are you? Let's get an ice cream and come back tomorrow." No complaints there. Sold to happy troops, and home we went. Well played, Mum. Mind you, I didn't quite manage to sell it to Paul, but you win some, you lose some, right? Knowing your audience can help you sell your information, ideas and products to everyone. The most important processes in sales communication are: number 1, asking open questions and then actively listening. Number 2, observe the other person's body language and their reaction to the conversation. Number 3, give them feedback, repeating back to them what you think that you heard them say and clarifying that the information is correct. This way, you understand what your audience wants, not what you want, and then you can proceed to deliver the goods, so to speak. Let's look at some ways to approach the extrovert client. Talk face-to-face. Cover a wide range of topics. Don't force the discussion too deeply into one subject. Allow the extrovert to talk, think, and talk again, to develop the ideas so that as they're talking, they can think through and change their mind. Learn to bring the extrovert back to the original topic of sale and help them regroup their thoughts, as often their talking process will lead to many tangents. Let's look at how to approach the introvert type client. Don't introduce too many topics into the discussion, and be prepared to go more deeply into one subject. If possible, give advanced warning of the need to discuss an issue, or better still, give them something to read first. Don't force the extrovert to act. Allow them time to think, talk, and then rethink about the subject before coming to their own conclusions. Encourage the introvert to share their thoughts. Don't interpret silence as agreement. Wouldn't it be an advantage to understand and accommodate these different communication styles? An accountant client recently sent me this. Hello, Kate. You asked me to put in writing what I got from your workshop a couple of weeks back. I've been operating for the last 10 years, believing my clients had no interest in discussing with me anything but bookkeeping. This is because when I'm hiring people by the hour, I want them in and out as fast as possible. I'm not really interested in their opinion of how the football went on the weekend or their marital problems. I'm interested in keeping the bill as low as possible. However, after your presentation, I recognize that everyone is not the same as me. Some people like to chat. So I have been initiating a discussion with my long-standing clients, and I'm surprised how many like to share their family and weekend stories. These chats sometimes move on to business talk, which on 2 occasions has led me to extra work. The discussion has given me the opportunity to better understand their business, aspirations, and give them a better understanding of the services I provide. From now on, I'll give my clients the opportunity to small talk. If they're up for it, so am I. To my surprise, I'm also enjoying these chats. Regards, Colin. What a great feedback on a workshop and how Colin took home and put the information I presented him into practice. Let's talk about how different types gather information. Sensing types look for details. Intuitive types look for the big picture. Always describe the overview before the details when presenting your sale. Why? Because if you start off with too much detail, you've lost the intuitive, because they're looking for the big picture. Some ways to approach the intuitive type client. Emphasize long-term benefits over short-term. Be innovative in your style of communication. Discuss the meaning of the information or data and the insight it provides. Identify opportunities and challenges. Discuss the most important steps in a process, in order of importance, rather than going through each step in chronological order. Ways to approach the sensing type client. Focus on concrete details and discuss the steps involved in the correct sequence. State the next practical step. Identify relevant experience or other successful applications. If you're outlining an idea, state when the details will be sorted out and who will do it. My sensing friend is currently renovating a house, and his intuitive interior designer has given him ideas and colour schemes she has in mind. These have been presented verbally along with diagrams that are visually intricate and unfortunately somewhat confounding for her client. She is also a thinking type and finds his sensing detailed questions frustrating, and her response is often curt and impatient, making him feel confused, unheard, and angry. If she was aware of the different types of people she was dealing with and understood that many people don't have the knowledge and skills she has, she could have been more detailed and clearer in her delivery and have provided positive feedback and empathy. Will he use her again and tell others about her? Probably not. She could possibly be missing out on business just because she doesn't understand people. Wouldn't it be great to have this knowledge? Now let's look at the thinking type, who likes to analyse pros and cons, and then be consistent and logical in deciding, and the feeling type, who are concerned with values and what's best for the people involved. Thinking types. They like to take a business-like approach, so be logical in your arguments. Find out and support the criteria that the thinker uses to evaluate and use alternative suggestions. They want to know why. Discuss the costs and the tangible benefits. With the feeling type, be constructive and focus on areas of agreement. Recognize and support the other person's values. Take a friendly approach and express appreciation for the other person. Identify who else is for the idea and demonstrate the positive impact on people. I was working for an accounting company that had 26 accountants. Interestingly, when profiled, 24 out of the 26 were ISTJ. This is a great example of how some jobs suit different types. Let's think about why. I. Introverts enjoy a quiet workplace. S. Sensing. Accountants are looking for details and sequential facts. T. The use of their critical, logical thinking process is very valuable. J. Judging. The need for structure and order in this job is a natural process for these types. So these people were very happy in their workplace and with their work. They were working with their natural preferences. While I was talking to them, I encouraged them all to put themselves in someone else's shoes and look at the world through their eyes. One of the group put their hand up and asked, "So you mean manipulate them?" Shocked that they might have thought this is what I meant, I started to retaliate. No, that's not what I mean. I noticed his fellow colleagues all nodding their heads in agreement. Wow. I suddenly realized that with all my personality knowledge, I was selling my feeling style of thinking foremost, looking at the world with empathy and thoughts about others, whereas my thinking type audiences were looking for critiquing logical ways of doing things. I changed my language immediately and said, "Sure, if that's how you see it, that's okay." When I told my thinking family that night that I was horrified that they thought the word manipulate was acceptable, they all said, "Well, it is really what you're doing, isn't it?" Here's how the saying goes again, doesn't it? Different strokes for different folks. Think about what language you use. What impact would it have if the client you were working with was your opposite? What differences in conversation might occur, and therefore what conflict might develop? How much time, energy, and unhappiness could you save if you get this conversation right? Finally, judging and perceiving. This fourth preference looks at how much structure or flexibility you need in the outer world. With the judging client, have a clear purpose for the meeting and an agenda that you've both agreed on. Don't meander through the discussion. Adhere to time and be predictable. If you need to introduce something radically different, give plenty of notice. Focus on reaching decisions and then moving on to the next subject. Don't reopen subjects that have already been concluded. With a perceiving type client, adapt to the perceiving person's agenda. Don't impose a formal agenda. Be prepared to explore the subject. Allow the perceiving person to meet deadlines in a last-minute rush, as long as the job is done. When scheduling meetings, leave time free in your diary for the meeting to run over schedule or for them to be late. How does the JP dimension affect the closure of sales? This is a very important dimension of personality preference, as the judging preference for closure means they're likely to follow up more effectively than perceiving types. Therefore, attention to this process is important. If you are a perceiving type dealing with a judging type, follow up now. Their motto is just do it. Any delay for them will mean that you're not really interested in them or the sales. If you're a judging type dealing with a perceiving type, give them a couple of variables to play with and then follow up in a couple of days. Allow them to consider their options, as perceivers love options. A perceiving type with a perceiving type never gets the job done, so know yourself and the areas you need to develop and work on it. A judging type with a judging type will usually get the deal done instantly. However, they can make the mistake of deciding too quickly without taking in all of the variables, and they can miss out on important information. Today we're talking to Kath. Kath is an ENFP. ENFPs are people-centered creators with a focus on possibilities and a contagious enthusiasm for new ideas, people and activities. They are energetic, warm and passionate. ENFPs love to help people explore their creative potential. Hi, Kath. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, hi, Kate. It's so nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you on the show. Now, you're an interior designer. I'm just wondering if you can give us a bit of a history about yourself and your career so far.
Sure. So I originally, post-secondary school, went to school for marketing, and I worked in publishing for a while, and then I got into real estate. And after my kids were born, I actually went back to school into design. When I was working in real estate, I loved working with buyers. That was the fun. And that was part of the direction I think that I saw at the design. It was always the possibilities, and working with them was a fun adventure.
Right. So then after doing that with your real estate and working in there, what kind of thing did you do after that?
So after real estate, I went back to school, and I went into design, and then I opened up my own design firm,
Right.
which looking back wasn't the smartest way to do it. I would have been much better off working for someone and learning their systems, and just really getting a better handle on the business and how that works. That really ended up being my struggle when I had my own firm.
Hmm.
The design part was the easy part, but the systems were really not good.
Absolutely. So as an ENFP, who's someone who likes to make last minute decisions and fly by the seat of their pants, basically, looking back on that, it would have been better to be a little more sensing around it and maybe even do things differently moving forward. However, as you and I know, sometimes when you rush into things, there's a lot of learning that takes place. And so what helped you when you learned about the Myers Briggs Type Indicator?
Well, so first of all, I really learned about it probably ten or so years ago. My 21-year marriage had ended, and I was really kind of looking at myself, trying to understand myself better, trying to understand, kind of what motivated me to do things or not do things, and then looking career-wise, thinking what it was that I wanted to do going forward. So the funny thing is, I've probably done the test all of, I don't know, maybe 8 times, because I've questioned it.
Hmm.
And it's
Yes,
always
yes,
been
and
the
the
same.
intuitive questions. Whoops.
Shocker.
Yeah.
um,
Good to know.
yeah. So the funny thing is, at first there was a little sense of relief, because it really applied to me. It spoke to me. It made me understand things better, but it also really highlighted my weaknesses, some of my strengths as well, but also the areas that and if I was really honest with myself, it really highlighted the areas that I've had issues with. So while it made me feel, you kind of vacillated, right? Like there was a good feeling to an understanding. Um, and then there was this, okay, you know what? I either have to pretend I don't know that now, or I have to really look at it.
Do something about it. Yep, absolutely. It also stops a bit of self-flagellation over why did I do this? Oh, I'm a failure, etc., etc. When you understand yourself and you can see that it's not really failing, there are just aspects of your personality that are not as good at other things as they are at others, then you don't need to beat yourself up over these things. You can look at improving them, or you can also looking at for the things that you do best.
And I love the way you put that, because that is really the process for me of really what it has done over all this time. I certainly went through that period of looking at, but then you really need to lean in and say, okay, these are my strengths. So what can we do with those? How do we maximize those? How do we turn that into a career? So that, yeah, and I think that's why I kept doing it, because I kept, at different stages, there was a part of me that it would be, I might have felt very guilty for something. And then, you kind of work through that. And then I would almost do it again and look at a different aspect and say, okay, yeah, this is true. I love this. I love, coaching people and being a cheerleader and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we look at your profile too, the daily details that you've mentioned here, like running a business and doing the bookkeeping and looking at all those fine detailed things, which a sensing person really does love, that was not for you, for you, looking at the big picture, helping people out, being warm and friendly is all about you. So what did you eventually figure out that you love the most? And so what are you currently doing in that sense around all of that?
So you're absolutely right. And I ended up, closing down my design firm. I currently work in a retail situation where I'm the designer, and it works beautifully because clients they come to me, and then I can spend the time working with them and really, focusing on them and their needs and where they want to go. I'm not involved in any of the detail part of what they're doing, other than really working with them on the big picture and the smaller little steps to get there. And even, going forward, and I think of my career and where, so now learning that, should I go out on my own, I would look at that differently, and I would need to hire out the things that I'm just really, honestly, not only not happy doing, but really I would put them off forever.
Absolutely. And the importance of that is that everyone can run a business as long as they're sitting there and looking as you are now, looking at it and going, well, where are the things that don't interest me, stress me out? How can I delegate those to somebody else who's great at it and loves that job? And then you can sell your best part of you, which is the sales side of everything and showing people and helping people out. And a lot of people in business, in small business, don't realize this, because when you start a small business, you're often the only person and you're trying to do absolutely everything. And this is where failure of small business often happens, is that you spend more time doing the things you don't like because you don't understand them and you spend too much time doing that, rather than you usually go into business because you love something. And you don't end up doing what you love when you're in a small business like that. So obviously, sometimes working for someone like you've found in this moment of time now, is that they've taken care of all the stuff you don't like and you have the freedom to do what you love to do.
That's absolutely true. And it's part of it for me is a little crazy to think how long it's taken for me to truly understand that. And listening to you say it, it even makes that go a little deeper.
Well, that's great, because in the truth of it, doesn't matter how long as you're there right now. That's the best part. Kath and I were talking earlier, audience, about how much older we're getting as these times go by. So for us, we have to make the most of everything right now and keep moving forward with the plans that we have.
I think 30 great years, that's the plan.
That's right. We'll be wonderful. I'll be wonderful at 90, I'm hoping. So tell me about what do you love about your job right now with the people that you work with? So if you can give a bit of an explanation even about how you go into this job and what you do for the people who are there, because it's a very interesting job. I've never heard of somebody doing what you do.
Okay, so I work for a retailer, and what I do is I provide a design service that's actually free to the client, to help them create the space and really help them visualize what the furnishing is going to look like in their space. So I will do everything. I will go to their home. I will take measurements, photos, come back, do it all up on my computer. So it's a great plan that you can, look at it in a 3D aspect. Mm-hmm. And then you can actually put the pieces right in place. So people can really visualize kind of what they're getting. And what I love with that is, for me, I look at the whole scope of it. So I'm able to talk to them about fabric and colors. And, I take the real estate aspect and I'm able to say, okay, what is your plan? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, how are we looking at that? So that's really the main part of what I do. I'm not selling them the furniture. There's a salesperson assigned. So I work, part of the other thing I learned through Myers Briggs, which is really interesting. I love working in a team. I love a team environment. And this gives me that. And so with each different salesperson, I actually have the different aspects of a team. So it's a very, it's a different situation with each personality, which I actually find really fun. It's never boring.
Well, that's right. And as an extroverted person, being part of a team is great because you have people to share ideas with, and working with clients is great too because you're able to share those ideas. Now, look, I think your industry does have a lot of intuitive people in it because they're creative. And I use a person all the time when I'm decorating my house, and people will say, why? And I say, because I have no idea. This is not my thing. I need someone to present me with a big picture about what I'm going to have, and otherwise I get caught up too much in the detail. So it's wonderful to have people like you to come and share this. And as I've mentioned earlier in this podcast today, it's important, and you do understand this, that you go back into the details for many of them, because a lot of them are detailed people because we don't have that vision that you have. So what are the kind of processes that you use to understand your clients? Do you have a bit of an example for me at all?
Yes, I do. I would say, so the first thing is I try to create a situation that the client's very comfortable. I always, talk to them. It's, I love the word no, sometimes better than, well, actually all the time better than I even love the word yes,
right,
because it directs me, right? The whole idea is to build a relationship of trust where, people understand it's not about my personal taste at all. It's about putting things together to give them the space that they're looking for. So, that's a really important part, asking the right questions, asking questions that people are comfortable sharing and really being honest about it. And then, we're living in a world of masks. So that's always a little bit of fun. I've become really good with, that tiny little squint of an eye and an eyebrow and being able, and especially for a more cautious person that doesn't want to say anything, and they pull themselves back and they'll squint their eyes a little bit. And I'm able to say, I don't think that's fabric you like. Or,
It's true. It is really true of what's happening right now, because facial expression is so important for all of us to look at and read. And when you haven't got that, it's pretty hard going. So what other things do you use body language wise when you're presenting stuff to people?
So it's funny. It's quite interesting if I think of even just what's happened in the last 2 years. I think, again, when you lose a certain sense and you lose the sense of looking at someone's entire face, you are really paying closer attention to the other things. So eyes first, but then even that, again, the typical body language of leaning into something that we like and pushing away from something that we don't like. And I work with couples, which is super interesting because it's really neat to see how they interact. And every now and then, I'll have challenging clients that they're on completely different pages. And you can see that in their body language even, right? One is really kind of pushing back and the other one's leaning in.
How do you go with that situation then? How do you read that and put that into action and make it work for both of them? Because you're right. I mean, often people get someone like you in because they are disagreeing about what they want as well.
Yeah, then the number of times I've even just kind of walked into a home and there's a standoff over the kitchen island. I remember one time walking in and they said, you're going to decide. I'm like, well, we're going to figure this out together. I actually love it, to be honest, because it's a real challenge, right? And it's a challenge because to me, it's not, as I always say, it's not that I have the answers and it's not that I have this perfect idea of what the design should be. It really, to me, good design is the synergistic, approach from everybody. Everyone has input. And when you're dealing with a couple, when you're dealing with a family, you need to make sure that everyone, their needs are all being satisfied. So, I had one particular client. He was an architect and he had built this incredible modern home. It was beautiful. Very, cement and lots of windows, and it's just stunning. They came to me because they were really struggling with the interior. He came from a background of needing everything to be just so, and really looked for the perfection in things. He also looked for patinas that weren't going to change. Concrete was going to always look like concrete.
Concrete, yes.
So, and then when it came to the inside, like I remember the first thing he said to me was he wanted to do a big, massive granite a dining table beside their granite island. And his wife was saying, no, I need warmth. I need texture. I need, So
wow.
That was and really their approach was completely opposite. And it took a long time, but it was really fun and interesting to watch, sort of, because I would explain with him, sort of why we were looking at wood instead of concrete, and how does this feel, and how does that make you feel, and all about feeling. To be honest, it's all about feeling.
Right, right. And did he come around? How did you get him to come around for her need for warmth versus his need for cement perfection?
So, so it was again that balance of he ultimately he wanted a great family home. So it was more about him understanding that his sort of need for everything to be perfect and to never change, that was actually driving his design. And once he understood that, he was able to open up a little bit, and we were able to say, okay, we could do something really sleek and modern, but we can give it a warmer feeling. It'll have a different, and so it really did take a very long time. And
Yes.
there were arguments but that being said, it was a really, really interesting thing. I think for all of us, we all learned a lot in the process.
Absolutely. So it's really a coaching session and, like you say, helping people understand themselves and helping people understand the people that they're living with. And as we all know, no family home stays unmessy, nice and clean cut. It's all part of being a family. Unfortunately, nothing ends up being perfect when you're living that type of life. So I guess for him too, that desire wasn't going to happen anyway. Life isn't perfect, unfortunately. So fantastic. So they obviously loved what they ended up with.
They did. They really did. And it was interesting to see, toward the end of how they were talking about their outside and all these other things. And it was the sense of really trying to understand what both their needs were. He needed to see something, she needed to see something, and finding a way to make that work. So it was really cool.
Well done, Kath. That sounds like hard work and it sounds like it went really well. So congratulations. Now, the other thing we talked about was other clients of yours, and you said that you sometimes have teachers as clients. So what are some of the challenges of these? Well, I talk about in my podcast today about how sometimes certain jobs attract certain types of people, and not for a bad reason, but for the reason that when they're in that job, they're in their most preferred type. So they're very happy. And there are some types that you see through your work, and teachers are kind of one of them that you find a certain way that they choose things.
Really true. And I've learned this. So it's interesting. Yes, it's all been experiential for me. And it was really interesting to find that. So now when I find I'm working with a teacher, and one of my best friends is a teacher. So
yes. Don't worry, I'm a family of teachers here.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Me too. But they're very detail oriented. So very, very detail oriented. And what I have to work on is, explaining to them that while the details are very, very important, we have to always have that bigger picture in mind. I find myself using this crazy analogy of that it's like you're always at a fork in the road. And at
Yes.
that fork in the road, you make one decision, you're collapsing the other road in the fork, and you're now down a new path. And then again, the next decision, the next fork, we collapse one, we make it. So I for some reason, that seems to be something that people understand and respond to. And it helps them, I think it takes away some of the overwhelm, maybe. Because I found even sometimes choosing a color or choosing fabrics, again, I'll see that this sort of really pulling back and saying, whoa, like you pick for me and I will never do that. Because it's their space. So it's really about, okay, how can we do this in steps that it's not overwhelming? And it's really cool to see when you do that in steps, how excited people are with their choice at the end. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting with detail for teachers, architects, engineers, very, very precise. So again, they look at it again very differently. And they're all opposite to me.
Yes, absolutely, they are. And the thing is that they need you. And as a sensing person, I totally understand. So what you're doing with your fork in the road analogy, and I love intuitives because they put stories behind the things that they tell people. And yours is a story, whereas I say to intuitive people, you need to step your sensing person up to your big picture. And you're just using forks in the road to get your people to the big picture. And it's just a lovely story and a way of doing it. That is a really great thing for people who might be intuitives listening right now on how to direct a sensing client along the way so that they eventually get to the big picture that you have at the end of the journey. So that's a fabulous thing. You don't realize it, but
No.
you have told a story. And it's often, they're the things about big picture people, is that a lot of the time it becomes part of a story, and it is entertaining, and it's a great way of showing people what you want as well. It's just a very different style of presenting it, and it's a fabulous way of doing it. Kath, thanks for sharing your time today. It is absolutely wonderful listening to your view of what you do in your business and how you've come so far in understanding yourself and the clients that you work with. I would love to work with you as a client in that sense, because I just love hearing about you and the way that your style works with your clients. So I'm sure there are people out there who would love to do something like that themselves, and listening to you is a great start for understanding that we need ENFPs in our lives. So thank you for coming today.
Well, thank you, Kate. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm learning so much listening to you. I love your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that too. I look forward to catching up with you sometime again in the future. As you can see, using personality instruments such as the Myers Briggs Type Indicator will help you understand yourself and your client in the selling process. This then enables you to hear and clarify and understand the client's needs. You'll be able to tailor the product and the service to those needs. You'll be able to present the benefits and build trust, respect, and long-lasting relationships. In fact, we can get along with just about anyone if we know who he or she is and how they need to be treated. When we understand people's personality, we can give them what they need. If you know and address your areas of strength and development, you can begin to read your clients, and you'll develop a set of skills to motivate, influence, and inspire those you're selling to. This enables us to build trust, respect, and long-lasting relationships, which ultimately convert into loyal clients and future friends. The best thing about this, it's a skill you can cultivate. Approaching people from the other perspective is just like flipping a pancake. It's tricky, but it can be done. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Podcasts That Pop. Would you do us a favour and recommend this podcast to one friend? Thanks, and see you next time.